Hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. No great empire has ever managed to maintain its strength forever and has managed to maintain progress forever, but instead, every great human empire has always backpedaled and eventually been destroyed, or more often has destroyed itself. In the United States of America right now, it increasingly seems like we are in the last phase of that progression, where good times have created weak men, and now weak men seem to either be intentionally or not creating hard times that were made over the course of just a couple of weeks that have irrevocably destroyed trust in the United States of America and have destroyed the pillars that made the United States so wealthy and so powerful to begin with. Right now, changes are happening so rapidly that most Americans are not even aware of them yet. People increasingly not only do not trust the United States anymore, but they actively distrust us and no longer want to be in our sphere of influence. And what we're seeing, which I'll describe in a few parts throughout this video, is really a new multipolar world that seems to be forming very rapidly to replace the hole that US influence is creating. Right now, those signs are small. Perhaps this is reversible, but probably not if the decisions that are being made continue to be made. So let me explain a little bit what's going on. First, let's start with a quick summary of the foundations of power that have over the past century made the United States the most powerful and the wealthiest nation in human history. And then I want to explain how the United States is now actively kicking out those pillars of power from beneath their own feet. This world order, even though the United States is the one who created the world order, and they created it primarily for their own benefit.
I'm Nicodemus, and thank you, EFK, for welcoming me into this discussion.
Nicodemus has a channel, Nix and the Diaspora. Kindly check his channel. I promise you, there's a lot to learn from there. There is a story about Solomon, and Solomon was once having a party. He took one of his servants and called him, and he told him, I want you to do for me something that will always affect my mood. If I am happy, I want that thing you will bring to make me sad. If I am sad, I want that thing you bring will make me happy. Now the servant walked on the face of the earth. He went to Europe, to Asia, North America, South America as the last place. When he came to Africa, he went to the old African wise men, and he told them the case of King Solomon. And these people were surprised. Why is the wise king looking for such a thing? And he said, please, I need to bring it to him because he's going to have a party. These wise men from Africa told him, okay, we shall also respect the king. The wise men gave this servant a ring, a golden one. And in this ring, it was inscribed some words. Some words I'm not going to share with you in this part. So he took the ring, crossed the Red Sea. When he got to Jerusalem, he found Solomon ready for his party. The guests had already started coming in. So the servant waited till the party started. While Solomon was busy enjoying and dancing and drinking with his 200 women, the servant came and he offered him the ring. And when Solomon took the ring and he saw it and wore it, he changed his mood once. His guests were scared of how he changed his mood. What do you think was inscribed in the ring?
I think Evans will tell us at the end of the video.
I'll tell you what was inscribed in the ring. I'm very eager to know
what was written on that ring.
Yes. We have USA. We had the Mughal Empire of India, Ottoman Empire of Turkey,
the Roman Empire, the Egyptian Empire. We had so many empires.
Babylon.
We
We also had one in Africa. We've had so many of these, you know. They all have one thing in common. They all never lasted.
In as much as some took over 1,000 years, some took 600 years,
Yes.
but at the end, they all ended.
The same thing is happening to the United States of America, and many people are calling the USA Babylon. They call it Babylon for a specific set of reasons.
Babylon was the ancient kingdom, and we are living in the modern times. Maybe with respect to characteristics of Babylon,
Yes.
they term US as the current Babylon.
In Babylon, these people were outspoken. These people were liberals. These people were woke. We've known of Nebuchadnezzar. He came to crash. America is following the same path. America for a long time has been the superpower, but it's losing that grip. We have countries like China coming out.
Russia is coming up.
Russia
also with the introduction of BRICS.
Now, we are saying this because we are going to react on a video and give our thoughts on it about a white American, He came forward and he was telling us the reasons why he thinks USA is going to crash, if not crashing at the moment. I believe we should listen to him. There's a lesson we can learn, and then I shall also tell you what was inscribed in that ring.
That's what I'm eager.
You know, there's a saying that I really like that helps to really quickly summarize all of the high points and all of the low points of world history. That helps to explain why no great empire has ever managed to maintain its strength forever and has managed to maintain progress forever, but instead every great human empire has always backpedaled and eventually been destroyed, or more often has destroyed itself. And that saying goes like this: hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. In the United States of America right now, it increasingly seems like we are in the last phase of that progression, where good times have created weak men, and now weak men seem to either be intentionally or not creating hard times. And really, the American century, for all intents and purposes, might already be over. And it's all because of a couple of decisions that were made over the course of just a couple of weeks that have irrevocably destroyed trust in the United States of America and have destroyed the pillars that made the United States so wealthy and so powerful to begin with. Right now, changes are happening so rapidly that most Americans are not even aware of them yet. And I think I am one of the exceptions because I have this YouTube channel which allows me to interact with a majority audience that is Europeans or people from other parts of the world. And that audience gives me a lens into how the rest of the world actually thinks right now that most Americans may not see for several months or maybe even several years. But that view that I am seeing is very palpable within the past month or so. A massive change in sentiment of people, citizens of other nations, towards the United States. People increasingly not only do not trust the United States anymore, but they actively distrust us and no longer want to be in our sphere of influence. And what we're seeing, which I'll describe in a few parts throughout this video, is really a new multipolar world that seems to be forming very rapidly to replace the hole that U.S. influence is creating. Right now, those signs are small. Perhaps this is reversible, but probably not if the decisions that are being made continue to be made. So let me explain a little bit what's going on. First, let's start with a quick summary of the foundations of power that have over the past century made the United States the most powerful and the wealthiest nation in human history. And then I want to explain how the United States is now actively kicking out those pillars of power from beneath their own feet. All empires throughout all of human history have gained power on two major pillars. The first is military dominance, and the second is world trade. And pretty much without exception, any nation that wanted to be great throughout history pursued those two objectives in a number of different ways. Sometimes those objectives manifested themselves more peacefully, where the people that were basically being subject to that nation or that empire were more or less happy about the outcome. Often the nations that were subjected to the power of that empire weren't happy, and it just depended on how things played out. The United States, of course, as the most powerful nation in the world right now, is no exception to those two rules. And really, over the past century, the primary reason the United States has gotten so wealthy and so powerful is because they intentionally set out to be a global country. They did this in a way that is arguably different than any other empire in human history, but nevertheless, they did it. Where over the past 100 years, and especially in the period following World War II, the United States explicitly pursued a strategy of globalism. We wanted the wealth and the goods of all the nations around the world, and to help protect those interests, we built a massive military with military bases all over the place. And in particular, we built an extremely powerful global navy. Now, we use this military and this navy differently than most empires did prior to us, which is we sought primarily to protect other nations, to keep people within our sphere of influence, so that they would willingly want to work with us and willingly trade with us and allow us to reap the benefits. But one way or another, the United States got wealthy because of military dominance and because of global trade. However, over the past couple of decades, it has become increasingly clear that Americans do not understand this basic set of facts, and they have begun to actively work against these interests, seeing America's globalism as a cost center rather than a benefit center, seeing our need to be interconnected with the world as something that is taking away from us rather than something that is adding to us. Why we feel this way, it's difficult to say. Perhaps it's just because we have so much wealth that we're spending so much time consuming that wealth that we don't spend any time reading books or reading our own history to understand where we came from. And increasingly, we have seen a certain segment of the United States wanting to withdraw from this world order, even though the United States is the one who created the world order, and they created it primarily for their own benefit. We have seen that manifest itself since Donald Trump has taken office for the second time in a very explicit way. Donald Trump has come into office and he has made several different statements and several different moves that all separately could have undermined the United States' position in the world order, and combined, they definitely are pushing other nations away from us. These include combinations of things like saying that we want to take Greenland and the Panama Canal and Canada, stuff that sounds like it should be made up or people putting words in Trump's mouth that he never said. But all of these things have been explicitly marked as goals by Donald Trump, and they're things that he has repeated several times, and it's clear that he is trying to move towards these goals as a matter of policy. On top of all of that, Trump has come out of the gate attempting to put tariffs on all of the United States' major trading partners between Canada and China and Mexico, about half of U.S. global trade, although he has backed out a couple of times after he's realized that these policies are devastating towards the United States' own economy. And then finally, Donald Trump has, at least as of now, paused military aid towards Ukraine and has made a move that really changes directions from decades of U.S. foreign policy. Now, as I said, all of these things are working together to undermine the two major pillars that have made the United States so wealthy and powerful, that being military dominance and global trade. I keep repeating those because I just really want to hammer the point home. I hope it doesn't sound like I'm just being repetitive for no reason. Obviously, things like tariffs undermine the United States' global position in trade because they completely reverse course on what was the goal of the United States in trade for several decades, and in what, in fact, has been the goal of every great global empire throughout human history, which was to receive more goods from other countries than you had to give yourself. It's called a trade deficit, and it's not a bad thing. It's actually been the goal of human empires since human empires were first conceived. But now the United States is trying to make goods, cheap goods from other countries, more expensive on purpose so that they can do the hard work of producing and they can pay higher prices. It doesn't make much sense, especially from a historical standpoint, but it's what they're doing. Now, in addition to that, from a military standpoint, the United States is undermining the military dominance that made so many nations want to trade with them in the first place. Of course, again, when we look at global empires have always tried to use their military to get more trade with other nations in one of two ways. One was the colony way, which was let's go and actually physically take territory and protect it and use the military to protect our interests to force the people who live there to send goods back to the home country. But there's another way where you can get the people to do that for you willingly by using your military to help protect them. And then because they are grateful for your protection, they are willing to live within your sphere of influence. That is the strategy that the United States has been pursuing, and now they're undermining that in two major ways. The first is obvious, where the United States for many decades has been willing to engage in warfare to protect the nations that are their friends and allies. We now see the United States backing away from Ukraine and actually being a little bit belligerent about their responsibility as the leading global power, saying that they don't want the costs of engaging in warfare or even supporting another nation while they engage in warfare. They just want the benefits of being a global empire. They don't want the responsibilities. At the same time, the United States is making statements that are at least making other countries nervous that they are shifting from the protection kind of empire to just the straight up take by force kind of empire. We see the United States saying things like, let's take the Panama Canal, let's take Greenland, let's make Canada the 51st state. And that is making people nervous about the United States' intentions. And it is causing them to back more and more away from U.S. influence. And they're not so willing to do it from their heart now. It's getting to the point where the United States might actually have to force them to do it, which they won't be very successful at. We see, for example, as the United States goes after Canada with tariffs, a huge buy Canadian and buy European movement is starting in Canada because people no longer want to trade with or trust the United States any longer. And we see similar things happening in Europe. And so with just a couple of moves, we have undermined the foundations of our empire, what might happen next? Well, obviously it is too soon to say exactly where things could ultimately go, but there are some signals of what is already happening. And one of the first signals is that in the wake of all of these decisions, the Swiss government, which was in negotiations for a contract to buy F-35s from the United States, now has a lot of voices in their parliament that are saying they're not sure if they want to make a deal for their own protection that relies on the United States. And we might see a lot more things like this happening. Because when the United States shows that at the flip of a hat, at the flip of an administration, they can completely change their interests and change the way they look at the world, nations aren't going to want to be dependent on us for major weapons systems that require training and parts and maintenance from the United States. Now, that might seem like a small thing, but it's not a small thing at all if that trend opens up and broadens up. Because one of the reasons the United States continues to be the most powerful military on the planet is because of the power we get by selling our military systems to other countries. Military systems, of course, like any other kind of technology, are very expensive to develop, and the main cost is in the research and development, not the production of individual units. So for a long time, the way that the United States has funded our own military is by building up this global trust and getting people to want to buy our weapons from us, which reduces the cost of us developing our weapons by allowing us to spread those costs among other nations. That's part of what has allowed our military to become so technologically advanced, because we can afford to do that because we have a global system that we sit at the top of that is built primarily on trust. With that trust broken, people are going to look to purchase weapon systems from other countries. That is going to increase the cost of weapons development, not just for us, but for everybody else who was in our sphere of influence. While our adversaries are not going to have the same problems. And it is going to erode our military edge that to this point has kept us head and shoulders above China. This is just one thing that could happen, and it's one example of how bad things can get. Now, the really sad part is that a large reason that this could happen and that trends are going to move in this direction is because the United States was so upset about how much money they were spending giving weapons to Ukraine that they decided to basically back out of those deliveries with no notice to Ukraine, and now the trust is broken. But the massive irony is that over the course of over 3 years, the United States has given less equipment in terms of monetary value to Ukraine than they sell on an annual basis to other countries around the world. In fact, less than half. So over the course of 3 years, we've given Ukraine a little bit over $100 billion worth of equipment. Every year, we sell approximately $215 billion, or maybe it's $285 billion. I can't remember the exact number, dollars worth of military equipment to other countries. And now, because we didn't want to keep up that aid, other countries are trusting us less and are now looking to develop their own systems rather than buying from us. So it's one of these situations where the United States is being penny wise and pound foolish, stepping over dollars to pick up nickels. Basically, because we don't want to give a little bit of money away, we have jeopardized a very profitable and a very strategically important industry. And again, this is just one example of what is happening now that the United States has undermined its global trust across the rest of the world. Now, what we tell the media is that the reason that we are doing all of these things is that we are trying to protect American interests. And when it comes to Ukraine, we say we're trying to avoid World War III. But there's a lot of ironies in all of these claims. First of all, World War III has already been avoided, and it was during the Cold War when the United States had a massive adversary in the Soviet Union and a massive nuclear arms race. At that time, World War III was avoided not because the United States backed down, but because the United States stood up and unified with its European partners, creating something called NATO. Maybe you've heard about it. NATO is a very important institution that kept the world out of war through strength, by showing our enemies that if they wanted war, it would be too costly for them. And because of those actions, our enemies didn't pursue war. But now we see the United States taking actions that show that they may want to back away from NATO. They are pretty belligerent about NATO growing in power, even though, again, that is what kept the world out of war over the past several decades. Now, on top of all of that, we see the United States making these bizarre statements about Greenland and how we need to possess Greenland because of its strategic importance, apparently not realizing that we can already possess all of the strategic importance of Greenland without having to take it from anybody, just by continuing to support and uphold the world order that we worked so hard to create. The United States, of course, historically has had military bases on Greenland, even though it isn't our own territory. Because we have been part of this international community, that nation has been more than willing to invite the United States to take part in being on Greenland and use the island for its strategic position without the United States having to take it over. Now we see the United States saying we want to take it, we want it to be given to us, whatever, one way or another, we're going to get it, while at the same time saying that they want to back away from NATO. And again, we see this move from the old kind of empire that the United States was, the better kind, the kind that protected global interests in partnership with other nations, to basically saying, well, we want to do things on our own. We don't want to have to be involved in other nations at all. Again, we want all the benefits. We want none of the costs. But here's the problem, America. When we don't pay the costs, when we don't pay the bills for the world that has made us so prosperous, we don't get to keep the benefits. The world is going to back away from us if we continue to act like that. And so it is up to us to change the narrative, to read our own history books, to realize where we came from, and to turn things around before it's too late. Now, this can be done. Already, 2 different times, Donald Trump has indeed backed down on his tariff threats against Mexico and Canada, in part because he was forced to see the reality of the debilitating economic effects this would have on his own nation, and in part because brave voices within his own party stood up and told him the truth, and he finally listened for a rare, brief moment. In order to turn this ship around, all conservatives need to do is embrace the voices that their party was not ashamed to speak in the past. Ronald Reagan, of course, was a big conservative, one of the most conservative presidents we ever had, who upheld these 2 pillars of American global influence. And now we see those who would speak along the same lines as Reagan, afraid to do so because they are terrified of being labeled as a liberal or a neocon just for disagreeing with Donald Trump. But the reality is that you're not a neocon if you do that. Those who would shut you down for doing that, they are the new conservatives. They are the neocons. They are the ones trying to change the narrative and take over what used to be a good party for their own purposes. You can win. You just have to be brave enough to speak up. Now, I know that a lot of people watching this video, a lot of people in my audience will certainly not agree with every point that was made in this video. That's okay. I don't have a problem with you if you don't have a problem with me. I hope you can see the importance of the message in this video and the intent behind it.
I think it's time we lay our verdict.
Sure.
After listening to the well-outspoken young white man.
Mm-hmm. And he has actually pointed out some key points that we want to discuss now.
Do you still want to know the answer to Solomon?
I still want to know the answer. I'm still eager to know what the inscription was.
Okay, I'll tell you after you have this commentary. The two things that made USA become where it is today.
Sure.
Because just like any other country, the USA was also colonized. It was colonized by the British. Mm-hmm. And they got their independence in 1775, mm-hmm. when I think George Washington became the first president. I guess so. If you know who became the first president, please tell us in the comment section.
Sure.
So America became a superpower through military dominance, mm-hmm. and through trade.
Sure.
This is according to the white brother, mm-hmm. you know?
Yeah.
It follows that America is losing these very ways that made them great, because there are some leaders who are prioritizing their self-interest over the interest that was laid by the founding fathers of America. Mm-hmm. Many times in Africa, we speak about America, we think of a big land of opportunity. Mm-hmm. And up to date, America is the land of opportunity. Mm-hmm. You want to grow rich, mm-hmm. America can grow you rich quickly. Mm-hmm. Black people, Africans, many are even dying in the oceans. Many are even boarding planes. Many are being castaways, you know, mm-hmm. just to get to the land of opportunity. Mm-hmm. But, yes.
So I think when the brother speaks of these 2 points, the military strategy and the trading, which makes US outstanding over all the governments of the world, is simply speaking about US making sure the countries of the world are under their influence.
Yes.
So, and when he speaks about...
willfully.
Willfully they are being, because they're being given protection, they willfully give products into the US.
Yes.
Yep.
And it is a good example because the Middle East is a country that has always faced wars. Mm-hmm. The Middle East is a region in the world that has always had intense wars till I don't know when, you know? Mm-hmm. First of all, we have a country such as Saudi Arabia. They have a trade treaty and a military treaty, mm-hmm. with those people. Yep. Saudi Arabia is very rich and its capital is Abu Dhabi. Mm-hmm. But Dubai is more common than Abu Dhabi. However, did you know that America promised to protect Saudi Arabia from its hostile neighbors, provided they'll be having oil? Did you know about that? It is that way. Mm-hmm. So they are offering their military protection, yep. in exchange for trade. For trade. Yes.
For the oil which is being produced there.
For the oil which is being produced over there, you know?
And the people are losing trust. The white guy has said that people are losing trust. And when trust is what builds relationship between, yes. countries and between people.
Yes.
And when the world is losing trust...
It is the foundation of all relationships.
Yeah, sure. And when the world is losing this trust, then it means the very things that were putting America to stand,
yes,
will make America to fall.
Yes.
Yeah.
And these things, again, we repeat, military dominance and trade.
Yeah.
You know, Trump, first of all, he knew that America people looked up to America. People looked for America. It's like the big brother. You are always looking at him for protection.
Sure.
You get bullied, you look at him. Many African countries, when we had civil wars, we always looked up to America for protection. You know, they always came through. Despite them having their own interest in that war, they always came through and they always offered protection. We've always had the United States of America International Development, which is the USAID. It has always been there for a long time. But since Trump 2.0 came in, the USAID was cut off, you know. That which makes us appreciate America and to bow down to it was the responsibility it took upon itself.
And now the African countries are realizing that they can indeed exist by their own. Without the need to have USA in the equation.
Yes.
And this really brings a bad effect to US. Because now when US offered the securities to African countries, and the African countries so, well, because of this security now, we are going to offer our products, be it agricultural products, or be it minerals. And now when Trump is withdrawing all these, and the African countries are coming to the realization that they can really survive in their own, then it brings a bad effect to the US.
Yes. And whatever triggered the thought of surviving on our own was the decisions that they made, you know. Until now, USA is very, very great, is very rich, you know. Right now, if I was given the opportunity to go to USA, though I might have some doubts, I might say it's better than Africa. To some extent, I'd say that.
Yeah.
Because it offers you opportunity. There's protection you get. I know USA has its own problems. I do know. But that which, you see, sometimes you gain power. You see, they say do not accept responsibility minus power. Yes, only accept responsibility with the power. But only these two things can only coexist. None can exist without the other. Power will not exist without the responsibility. And the responsibility won't exist without the power.
Yeah, sure.
You know?
Yeah, power will always come with the responsibility.
And do you believe that USA is crashing?
I'd say, as we've seen from the lessons, from the case scenarios of other empires, no empire has withstand forever.
Yes.
And surely America is on the brim of extinction, the American empire.
Yes. Because it's facing so much enemies, it's facing too much competition. The BRICS, the Russians, the Chinese, Canada, its very close neighbor, is having problems with Trump. Now they want to conquer. It's like they want to start and colonize other countries. Because the brother talked about they want to conquer Greenland.
Sure.
They wanted to take the Gaza Strip.
Yeah.
Now they also wanted to take some parts of Canada.
Yeah.
That is modern colonization. He wants to bring back that old demon.
And it all comes with, he talked about decisions. The current decisions which the current administration is putting forward is what is facilitating the deterioration of the US government.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, guys, we hope that you've learned from this specific commentary. And I promised you something. You've forgotten.
The inscription.
The inscription.
I can't forget about that.
Where did I get with the story? Where did I reach?
Now you got to the point where the king was parting and the servant went and gave the king that ring. And the king was happy, and suddenly his countenance was changed.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the guests were shocked, you know?
Yes, sure.
All of a sudden, he was happy. Now he's changed. Doesn't he want us here? But this is something that the king himself called for.
Yeah, he needed that.
Now I wanted to make some guess, borrowing from the context of what we've spoken about.
We were talking about King Solomon.
Yes.
Okay. King Solomon always said that all is vanity. So I'll take a good guess when he say, the inscription was all is vanity. All is fine. I know it might be wrong, but I'm willing to hear.
You are wrong, but not far away, you know.
Okay.
Borrowing from what we've listened from the brother, the answer lies within. Take another guess.
Okay. The second and last guess, of course, I'll take is we've learned that no empire has withstand forever. So I'd say, like, mene tekel, perhaps.
Yes.
That the kingdom is going to end. And if there is one thing that gives a king or any ruler a sleepless night is the reality of his government falling.
Yes.
So I'll say the inscription was mene tekel.
I like, you are also close to the answer.
Thank you.
Maybe if we combine the two, we get an answer. The inscription was, "It shall pass."
Oh, it shall pass.
It shall pass. When you are happy, it shall pass. When he was sad, it shall pass. So he was always on a cycle. Yes.
Very thought-provoking.
EFK original documentaries and Nick's.
Nick and Diaspora.
Yes. Kindly check out his channel and leave your link on the description.
Thank you, EFK. This was a very thought-provoking discussion, and I love it.
Yes. Yeah. It shall pass.
It shall pass, sure.